Today I'll be discussing some of the possible effects caused by spanking a child. While researching the effects of spanking a child, I found a few quotes posted on a website called religiostolerance.org that I'd like you to hear. The first quote, "Spanking is simply another form of terrorism. It teaches the victims that might makes right, and that problems can be solved through the use of violence by the strong against the weak." The second quote, "Infliction of pain or discomfort, however minor, is not a desirable method of communicating with children." And the third quote, and my favorite, "Spanking does for a child's development what wife beating does for a marriage." As a child, my parents believed in spankings as a form of punishment and discipline. As an adult and the father of a 9-year-old daughter, I have never used spankings as a form of punishment for any of her wrongdoings. My daughter is a very well-behaved child, and I believe this has resulted from talking with her as opposed to physically hurting her with spankings. I'm just a concerned parent that believes most other parents or future parents who would not want to intentionally inflict harm on their children. I personally do not agree with the notion that spanking a child for misbehaving will teach them not to misbehave anymore. There has been a lot of research and studies performed on the negative effects of spanking children, and I intend on covering 3 points as follows: increased behavioral issues and mental development problems, psychological effects of spanking children, and reasons not to spank your child. Lisa Berlin, who is the lead research scientist at the Center of Child and Family Policy at Duke University, performed a study of 2,500 toddlers and found that the children who were spanked as 1-year-olds tended to behave more aggressively at the age of 2. Another study performed by Eric Slade and Lawrence Wizzo from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health stated that children under the age of 2 undergo several fundamental transitions in emotional and cognitive development, including the initiation of relationships with adult caregivers and the development of a sense of reliance on adults and safety and security. If children are spanked at this early of an age, they may not develop a secure attachment to their parents and be in a greater risk of adjustment problems at preschool ages and later, including persistent behavior problems and poor competence with peers. During that same study of 2,500 toddlers, Lisa Berlin found that those children who were spanked at the age of 1 year old did not perform as other children on a test measuring thinking skills at the age of 3. Murray Strauss, a professor at the University of New Hampshire, performed a recent study measuring the IQ scores of children that were spanked between the ages of 2 and 4 and found that they had an average IQ score of 5 points lower than children of the same age that were not spanked. Now that I've discussed some of the behavioral effects, I will discuss some of the psychological effects. According to an article posted on AskDrSears.com, it states college students showed more psychological disturbances if they grew up in a home with less praise, more scolding, more corporal punishment, and more verbal abuse. In an article published in the New York Times, a psychologist by the name of Dr. Elizabeth Gershoff spent 5 years analyzing 88 studies of corporal punishment conducted since 1938 on the short-term and long-term effects of spanking children and found that spanked children are more likely to be aggressive, exhibit antisocial behavior, and have mental health problems. A psychological behavior that may result from spanking children is that they are at greater risk of becoming bullies. Corporal punishment can also cause a child to have psychological problems when they become adults. Adults whose parents hit them as adolescents are more likely to be depressed than those whose parents did not. So why should we not spank our children? One of the main reasons for not spanking your child is because spanking or hitting demonstrates that it's all right for people to hit other people. Physical punishment shows that it is okay to vent your anger or right a wrong by hitting other people. This behavior may carry on into teenage or adult life with interactions with siblings and peers, and eventually a spouse and offspring. Another reason not to spank your child is because it devalues the child. A child's self-image begins at home with how they are perceived by their parents, and spanking sends a confusing message, especially for children who are too young to understand. According to that same article on AskDrSears.com, it says that the evidence against spanking is overwhelming, and hundreds of studies all come to the same conclusions, which are: The more physical punishment a child receives, the more aggressive he or she will become. The more children are spanked, the more likely they will be abusive toward their own children. Spanking plants seeds for later violent behavior, and spankings do not work. If you use spankings as discipline for your child, I hope that the next time you're about to spank them, you recall some of the topics I discussed today, which are increased behavioral issues and mental development problems, psychological effects of spanking children, reasons not to spank your child. The next time your child misbehaves, try to discourage the bad behavior by taking away privileges instead of spankings. Try using timeouts as a way of punishment for your child. Try explaining to the child what he or she is doing wrong and the reasons their behavior is unacceptable. Spanking with a belt or any other object is not an adequate form of discipline. Children that have been spanked are more likely to have behavior problems, be aggressive to siblings and peers, and have lower IQs. Try to find other ways to discipline your child, such as the use of timeouts or suspending privileges.